talk about the spiritual wrestling matches.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had a few more of those this year than I've had in other years.
Right.
And I think probably a lot of people can relate to that. I've told you about some of my struggles I've had during the past year. Two of them would be like the loss of hope and the loss of trust in so much information. Truth just seems to be gone. Now, this is kind of funny because it seems like Animal Farm, 1984, Brave New World. You might as well throw in Fahrenheit 451. You've just read a few of those books. I just read Animal Farm about a year or so ago. And we talk about the similarities of some of the things that we see in society right now, things that almost seem like they're just looming on the horizon.
Right.
And as crazy as some of the stories in these books, they seem like they're really coming to fruition. So you see those things coming.
Right.
You know the struggle is going to be getting probably even more intense. What do we do? And I know you struggle with these things too. So what do you do? I know what I do. I just come and complain to you.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well, and so it's interesting because one of my shortcomings as a husband is I don't always share my feelings with my wife, or at least as much as she'd like for me to. And I think that's probably true maybe for a lot of folks out there. You don't see me struggle. And so the impression you can have is I don't struggle. And the reality is I do have those struggles. But one of the things that I learned way early in my life is I just go for a walk. So anytime, and this was before I really took my faith super serious. But anytime I remember as a teenager, and I would just get frustrated, I would just take off walking. And as I walked, I prayed and I shared my frustration with the Lord. And I can tell you, every time I got back, that frustration was pretty much gone, or at least I had a plan on what to do. And so a lot of mine is I'm praying as I'm walking to the gym. I'm praying as I'm walking in the mornings, and that gives me the opportunity to get perspective. Again, these are crazy
unprecedented.
I don't want to say unprecedented because
that seems like a buzzword, but it's been said a lot. But it describes
they're unpredictable times.
There you go.
And I think those are the times where it's easy. Again, you start to find out what you're trusting in. And I think for a lot of folks, life had been really good before all this happened, and we didn't know how much we were trusting in the idea of an American dream. We didn't know how much we were trusting in a political process that we thought was infallible, or how we were trusting in a certain leader or certain whatever. And then all of a sudden, those things start to fail us. They start to come crashing down. And it feels like we've lost hope, or it feels like we've lost trust, but what we've done, and this is one of the things that I think God as a loving Father does. And I think that's anything that keeps us from Him, He disciplines us, and He takes those things away. And sometimes that hurts. Because we really want to play with that toy.
Yeah.
Right? That was our favorite whatever. And even though it may have been the thing that was causing us the most harm, because we loved it so much, that when it went away, that we just, we threw a tantrum and we shook our fists at the air and we said, why? But really, this has been a time where I think for folks to recalibrate and to begin to ask themselves, okay, what am I trusting in? And okay, so if this was life from here on out, am I hoping in this life? Is this the life that was I expecting that this was going to be the kingdom? Or am I looking for a better kingdom? And that forces you to go back to the scriptures when it talks about in Hebrews that they were looking for a city, right? That they were willing to go through what they were going through because they were looking for a city not made by human hands, right? They were looking for the eternal city. And I think that's what we lost along the way somewhere. This idea that we are sojourners here. We are just passing through. Now, we have a job to do while we're here, right? We're ambassadors. So while we're here, we're to be sharing the gospel, and we're to be pointing folks to Jesus and investing in lives along the way. So we don't just go, see ya, we don't care. But it means that we don't put down roots and we don't make this a permanent place. And I think that's probably the thing that's shaken for most people, is they were making this their home. And when all of a sudden it started to shake and things started to come apart, they didn't know what to do.
So we've seen amazing things that God has done during the pandemic in the lives of people at Central, and we can celebrate. And, I really can't list them all here right now because we don't have time, unless you want me to. But we have new people coming to we have new guests every week at our outdoor services. We have maybe 5 or 6 people, new people, that haven't been on the campus before. Some of the people, we had, I think, 30 people go through our digital membership class. Some of those people are becoming members, and they have never set foot inside the doors of Central, just based on being from our outdoor services. The women's studies, they're diving into God's Word. They have a great study. My wife's involved in that. She's learning a lot. Kim and Christina have done so many things for the kids in the past year. And we have an indoor service for the youth Wednesday night. And now before that, they met in backyards, staying socially distanced. They dragged huge speakers, equipment, everything, various backyards where they met around the valley. And it's just amazing. I mean, I still think of, we wanted to meet, so we met, and it was 110 degrees outside that one night in, was it August or September? 110 degrees and smoke in the air. And that was our prayer night, but we still had 100 people here, in those conditions. And you've mentioned it too, Christmas Eve. It was freezing cold, but we still had 400 people at the one. It was drizzling rain. It had 100 people afterwards at the second service when I had to been in the 20s. It was very, very cold. So, from your perspective, how have you seen God work at Central this year? I mean, you have different things that you see than I do. I mean, different connections and so forth with people. What have you seen?
It's a good question. It's been different. So it hasn't looked exactly the same it has in prior years. For about 6 months, we couldn't do baptisms. Almost 6 months. But then when we could, we had 20 people sign up right away. In a typical year, we'll have a little over 100 or so that get baptized. And so last year was down, but it wasn't a discouraging down because a lot of that time we were online and we couldn't meet at all. And then when we could, we had baptisms. We've still seen the Lord working, like you said. You mentioned a lot of ministries that are still moving, still meeting, even if it was digital, even if it was online. We still had small groups that chose to meet in person, and that was, I think that was fruitful. So ministry definitely looked different this past year. So whatever metric you wanted to use, if it was number of people online, we have no idea how many people watch a service because we just know devices. So we don't know how many people are in the room when that device is on. We know how many people are showing up on campus, and we now we're averaging about 300 a week, and that's not bad when you've got to wear a mask and or you're outside, and so you're subject to that. So that's been super encouraging. Lots of new faces. I think that's been really fun. I think the adaptability of the team has been inspiring. Folks on staff have had to do a lot of different things and in a lot of different ways. And I think even with this team that's putting together this, you guys have done videos for every ministry and made sure everything got on. I think of the tech team and the worship team that for a long time were in an empty room with just cameras, and I've gotten us to the point to where now we're meeting inside and outside. Those are all, huge wins. And there's anecdotal stories of people who they've started reading their Bible more, or they're more impacted by prayer, or they've started some different spiritual disciplines. And I think we've got stories of that are happening. And so for me, this doesn't stop God. It doesn't stop the church. It's been different and it's looked different, but God's still been at work, and we've seen that. And one of the other things is, last year we came in behind budget, and yet we had more money in the bank than we've ever had. How does that work? We spent less than we needed to, and God took care of us the whole way. That's in a time when there were churches shutting down. There were folks that were having to borrow money from the government or do whatever to keep operations going, and God still faithfully provided the resources to keep us going. And so I look at all of those things, and I just, it's pretty amazing what God has done, and He's the one who gets all the credit. So
it's exciting. It is. So we've also had the privilege to pray for the people of Central as they struggle too. Now, our digital Connect cards, like you said, things are different. We used to have the little cardboard tag, cards that were in the bulletin or in the chairs each week. People would fill those out. I still have my set of cards because they're always distributed to the staff.
Right.
I still have my set of 6 or 7 from our last service before the pandemic, which was March 7th and 8th. I still have those on my desk, kind of just a little reminder there. It's like I pull them out every once in a while, and those 6 or 7 people, I still pray for them.
Good.
But right now, we have the digital Connect cards.
Right.
And Cindy, immediately after the services, she gets those. She compiles everything. She gets them out to the staff and elders, sends them out. And so we're on top of those right away. And now in the past few months, many of the requests have been COVID related too.
Right.
So we kind of went from the beginning of the pandemic to not really knowing anyone who had COVID. Right. Which was a struggle for all of it was a struggle. We're glad we didn't know anyone. Right. But it seemed kind of strange that we were all locked down, didn't know anyone that had it. Right. And then there was kind of a surge, it was maybe end of summer, beginning of the fall, where the majority of the prayer requests were somehow COVID related. Either someone personally had it, their loved ones had it, family member, neighbor, somebody, loved ones have died from it. So it became real. It's like, okay, there's something there's something to this. This is not made up. But people were getting sick. They're still getting sick with it. Right. I know Rosemary has a friend whose husband was in the Samaritan's Purse thing at the hospital. Right. Their outside facility for a week or two. He's home now. He's recovering. But it starts to hit home, and those that's another one of the prayer requests that came in. We're praying for him. So I consider it a privilege when everyone submits those requests, and I just want to let you know now that when you hit that send button, we're seeing them. We're praying for you. So keep it up. It's a privilege for us. But our staff and elders, they pray for them, and I say that as an example. Things are different, like you said. Things are different. And we've mobilized and adapted to the changing times. Right. We are transforming families to live and love like Jesus, albeit a little different. But discipleship is part of that. Right. Specifically in discipleship, how have you seen that changed at Central in the last year? We used to have women's studies packed on Wednesday mornings, and here we had Bible studies throughout the weeks. But we're still having discipleship. But how does that look specifically? A little different.
Well, it's some groups are still meeting in person, so those groups are probably look very similar to what they did last year. The primary difference then would be most of the meetings that happen digitally, so through Zoom or through whatever. And I think that adds a level of I think it's harder. It makes a level of distance because you don't necessarily feel as close to that person when they're not physically present. So it's made it a little more challenging. But I think, like you mentioned, the youth have done a fantastic job of figuring out ways to get kids together, whether that's going to the park and having a time to play at the park, whether that's the backyard meetings when they could get here, they were here. And so I think those are all been creative ways. I think the children has done a fantastic job of finding ways to serve families and help kids have fun. And I think that's been really good. So that hasn't changed as much. It has, because you can't just come on campus and do things. Right. You might have to do a drive-through, or you might have to be a little more creative in how those things look. But they're still adapting and they're still ministering in that way. As far as discipleship and reading your Bible and praying and sharing your story and being generous and spending time with other believers, I think all of those things, I think, are happening. Again, they're happening for the individual. I think now, again, with the work schedules that change and there's more time, I think folks are finding the importance of prayer. It's becoming more important to them. I think reading the Bible is becoming more important, especially as you talked about the idea of truth. And it seems like the story changes almost every day if you're getting your truth from the news. I think those things are happening on individual levels, but I think when you're talking about group discipleship type things, those just look mainly different because they're digital, and the groups that are meeting then are sharing via a computer. So again, there's a little bit more distance, but I think they're still praying for each other, and I think they're still encouraging each other during those times. People are texting more; they're making more phone calls. So I think those are differences, and maybe they're doing a little bit more of that in between meetings than they did before because they don't have the time to be in person and just kind of hang out and hang back and talk. So
okay. That kind of segues into this in my next question here. It's like, so what can someone do who's really struggling just to stay afloat, who feel like they've been sinking right now? What can they do as far as what can they do? How can they reach out to someone? Is there something they can do on their own? I like what you said about texting people. Maybe we need to do a little bit more of that, just be a little bit more proactive. But any suggestions to help people stay afloat?
Well, and part of it's going to be one of the things that you mentioned was our electronic connect card. That's a way to let us know that you're feeling that way. And so you can fill that out on a weekend or whatever. You can go to our website and you can send us a message and let us know. Personally, if you're going to take the initiative on your own, you're going, man, I'm feeling this way, and what can I go do besides sending a request and having somebody contact me? As I would say, call a friend or get involved with a group if you know one that's meeting. If you don't, then contact us and we can get you plugged into a group. But you need to be in a community group. Okay. For sure. I think you need to come to a service. If you've been watching online for the last year, come on campus.
It's
whatever you feel.
Yep.
If you need to be outside, then be outside. If you're more comfortable inside, we're wearing masks, all those kind of things.
We are following the protocols. Yeah, and we want people to feel safe.
Right.
But we're still worshiping.
Right. And so I would say get out of your house and come be a part of it. I think that's a big one of the costs of this thing is that emotional toll it's taking. And I think when you're around other people, other believers, then that the enemy just has less of a hold on you. I would say your personal time in the Word and in prayer, those are vitally important. If you're not doing that, start doing that again. But really, it's probably more of that human element, that getting connected with other people. That's probably what most folks are missing right now. And so come to a weekend service. If you're a youth, get plugged into the youth group and come on a Wednesday night. If your kids are feeling that way, get them involved in the kids ministry, and they can check in for the weekend services. Get involved in a community group. That's a surefire way you'll have a group of 10 people that are every week you're meeting with and can share prayer requests and that kind of stuff.
So I want to finish this on a positive note. I think we're kind of going in that direction right now, trying to encourage them. And I think we have some light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
We have the vaccines that are available. More and more people seem to be getting them. We got herd immunity because a lot of people have gotten COVID and they've recovered. And I think that's awesome because we've had like a lot of the prayer requests are COVID related, but there's a lot of people that have recovered from it.
Right.
And that's a praise in itself. We got other states like Texas beginning to open up, and maybe some more will follow suit. Maybe we'll actually get to watch a movie together again sometime. Maybe things are looking better, but at this time we still got to hang on. So how do we finish strong? What do we keep our focus on to try to get through that finish line from here?
Somebody said it on Tuesday. It's the unity piece. I think it's, we've gone through almost a year of this together, and everybody is at kind of that point of fatigue, and this is the time in the race where you just feel like, well, maybe I just give up and kind of step off to the side and let the other runners go. But this is the time to kind of to double down and finish strong, and so that means that, you know what? If we're wearing masks, we're wearing masks. If we get a chance to open up and not wear masks, then we won't wear masks at that time. Maybe we'll have a little bonfire and burn those things. I don't know.
Right. I will hold you to that.
There you go.
I will hold him to it.
There you go. But I think the main thing is it's easy to begin to attack the folks around you. You had said it. It's as if it's their fault that this is going on. So if they're showing up and they're wearing masks, then somehow it's their fault because they're perpetuating or whatever. Let's stop that. We're all on the same team. We're all following Jesus together. We all want to see the kingdom promoted, and it's not about me, but it's about we. And I think if we keep that in mind and we just say, okay, how can we encourage? How can we build up each other? Then that will help us finish strong.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of How Then Shall We Live? Thank you, Pastor Matt.
You're welcome.
And until next time, God bless.